Today's session is Curating Your Technology Toolkit, a platform-based approach to engage your learners. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. And we very much recognise their valuable contributions to society. Now, I'm coming to you from the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people, where I am in at the moment. And if anyone else would like to share as part of Welcome to Country in the chat, the lands that we're all zooming in from, as part of our own connection to country, that would be wonderful too. We'll take just a moment if anyone wants to share that in the chat, if you do know the lands that you're on. Quandamuka, welcome Lester. So Stratty and out that way. Today's agenda. First of all, I thought I'd start with unpacking the premise of what I've called this session, but to understand that premise, to explore why should we curate our technology toolkit, and what might that look like for each of us with our own unique groups of learners and in our own different roles that we have as well, because I can see we've got a number of different colleagues on the call today. Some of us are student facing in terms of dealing with students through our lectures or our tutorials. Others of us are learning designers and we prepare and deliver content as part of that role. Others of us might be involved in student administration or even higher education research. So we all bring different expertise to today's session, and I'm very excited to learn from all of you and for us to learn from each other as well. Then the next part of today is a series of what I'm calling some lightning lectures. So 5-minute segments to give you a taste of how I used the technology that I'm showcasing today with each of my learner cohorts. And we'll also do some digital tech demos for the 4 technologies that I have listed there for us. And so those 4 that I've chosen to showcase today as part of my own curation of my tech toolkit, and then I'm interested to learn what other tech that you might all be using, include Padlet, a platform on H5P called The Chase, a platform called Flip, which used to be known as Flipgrid, owned by Microsoft, and EdStem, or more commonly known as Ed Discussion Board. And that is a different plugin tool to the inbuilt default discussion board that our LMS, our learning management system here at UQ, has on the Blackboard Learn UQ website. And then finally, we'll conclude today's session with an open floor Q&A, which could be via the chat or could be you coming off microphone or turning on your cameras if you're wanting to do so, and engage with as much or as little as you want to be present. Bearing in mind, I do know that it's recorded and not everyone may want to have their cameras off. But the goal of that will be, there's just 4 that I've showcased today, but to hear about the tech that you're using, your experiences with digital tech, for us to learn from each other as a learning community here today. What do you use, what don't you use, and why? And also what might be in or out of your tech toolkit. So I'm thinking, you know, like many of us, we all are interested in pioneering and trying new things. And over time, for different learner groups or different needs, we might take things in or out of our toolkit. Before I get started, does anyone have any questions? Possibly not at this stage. Okay. All right. Well, why should we curate your tech toolkit? Well, there's a lot of tools out there. I don't know about any of you, but even before the explosion in interest and necessity for online learning became a very real reality for us all about 3 years ago, almost now, with the start of the pandemic, I've been interested in tech, and I'm sure that many of you have been too, whether that be technology that changes the way that we do education and we deliver, the way that we learn, the way that we work, the way that we engage with our colleagues, and the way that even other areas that I research in too, like healthcare, how healthcare is delivered. So I started to think to myself over the last couple of years, and I'm sure many of you have been thinking about these things too, there's so much choice for the different platforms we can choose to engage with. Some of those are our defaults, the basics like Blackboard here, it's our learning management system, and there's a few tools that go with that, as well as the default Office suite. You know, most of us have as a basic a PowerPoint slide deck that we would have with our tutes or our lectures that we prepare, and those basic tools of, you know, that we'd use. But beyond that, there's a lot of option and choice for us, even different variations for the platforms we might choose to record on, whether we use Kaltura or Echo 360 or Zoom to record to the cloud and create lectures and online sessions, whether we use any digital tools to create engagement online, such as Padlet or Jamboard or Flip or Prezi or Microsoft Teams as well. There's been a trial of that here at UQ with some student cohorts too. And using, I know you can see that there might be some things that you recognize here, or some of these logos, some others, some you might think of as being, yeah, that's pretty much in the academic higher education space. Others, perhaps you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that as a platform that potentially could be engaged with. Even Turnitin. I decided to list Turnitin because we can use that as a I can see Carrie laughing there. I listed this one because we can use it as an interesting tool when we create our rubrics in Turnitin. And I think it creates interesting discussion points around what the limitations of some of these tech tools and platforms might be, how rubrics can be set up, say, in one platform versus another, like the default rubrics in Blackboard, and rounding of numbers and all sorts of things that tend to come up. And so I did a bit of a brainstorm. As you look at this list, there might be some logos that you don't recognize. There might be some that are not here that you engage with. And that's part of what today is, I think, is to learn more about, well, what are we actually all using with our cohorts, and what are our experience with those different platforms. So I've brainstormed a few things for what my experience has been over the last couple of years, just anecdotally. And I used the word curate today, thinking of us as all curators. So I had a look at how I define that word just with Macquarie Dictionary for us all as technology curators. So I think for us, the tech tools are the tools that allow us and enable us to reach our students, engage our learners, revitalize and refresh our teaching, remain up to date. But they are tools, and I think they are a toolkit. They don't replace what we do as educators. And I think there's a lot of that, I won't say fear-mongering, but fear-mongering, I'll say it, about AI and what do chatbots do and ChatGPT and all these different technologies that are starting to come more and more into the education space, at least. And I think there is a unique value that we bring as educators, which we can harness and embrace and, I guess, learn from and with these technologies, but co-create value through them with our students. And I think that's probably my premise for where I come from for that. But I'll pause in my talking now and open the floor before we go to all the demonstrations and just see what anyone else's thoughts are on, do you like that concept of actually being a curator of your own tech toolkit, and what's in your toolkit might look some different to someone else's, and the ways in which you might use different tools. For example, it could be to tailor to the needs of your learners, which might vary each semester depending on your cohort, the different course content. And I can see we've got a lot of different disciplines represented on this call today too, to amplify your students' experience, and also the hybrid nature of the environment that we teach in. We've got learners both internally and externally enrolled, many of us do. And so we're trying to bring that democratized learning environment so that there is equity and access to the resources and content that we provide. So there's some of the things I thought. I'll pause now. And if anyone wants to share either in the chat or come off mute, what are your thoughts? Thank you, Anna, in the chat there. So to engage students more effectively. Yeah, I absolutely would agree. I've varied which technologies I've used across different semesters, depending on my cohort and the nature of the content I've taught, in order to try and better target and engage different students. And at different times of semester, we might bring in different tech over time. Thanks, Dom. So Dom says, the toolkits that suit the cohort and the course purpose work a lot better. Yeah. So when we tailor and target the tech that we're using, and thanks, Jacinta, too. So the curation of tools, particularly learning for particular learning activities and communicating messages are feedback. Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I sort of have looked at that with Turnitin and the different ways that we can use Turnitin. There's even a way to record your voice and to give that genuine feedback, you know, because sometimes the text on the screen or the text comment that we make might be a bit devoid of that emotion, but also the way that we inject emotion using emojis may not be appropriate for giving feedback in the context of a rubric. So actually having that short voice recorded message that you can do in Turnitin, I've never actually tried it, but I know that the facility's there. I think using these different types of tech platforms to deploy feedback, as Jacinta's mentioned, is really great. Jimmy, I can see you've posted there, the curation is a good idea as not all the tools are compatible with everyone's personal teaching pedagogy. Absolutely. And I think having that sense of what your own teaching philosophy is, which, you know, for many of you, you've either gone through some of the higher education academy programs here at UQ, or maybe through other institutions, or you're all very cognizant of your own practice. One of the first things you identify with is what your teaching philosophy is. And technology as a tool may vary for different people. And Carrie, yeah, thank you. To create your own online persona in your teaching. Absolutely. And whether or not, or how that can amplify what we do in the room onto the Zoom. I think that's the other thing is, you know, we all know now, I'm sure many of us, this is preaching to the converted in this room because we're all here about tech, but we know that it is more and different work. It is not just a matter of doing what we do in the room and putting it online. It's not just, teaching online isn't just about uploading our PowerPoint slides and doing a, you know, I'm sure for many of you, engaging your learners have found and tried many different strategies over the last few years. And I mean, that's the same in other contexts we look at, like healthcare. It's not just the same for a doctor doesn't have a waiting room and they can't walk in and shake the patient's hand and usher them in when we have telehealth. And so all those norms that we have in the classroom are challenged in an online environment too, in new ways. And Trevor has shared there too. So our learners are more tech savvy. Absolutely. So the learners that are coming through, if they're, you know, the school leavers of this generation, they've never known what it's not to not have the internet or to not have access to some of these platforms, or even the social media tools that are coming out are sort of going to define the next generation of our students and learners. And to break the routine of the lecture style delivery, absolutely, Gabriella. I think the you know, that old saying of the sage on the stage, painting of the lecturer as the font of all knowledge, has definitely been something that we've broken away from. And I think technologies are a great way to involve and to do that. Sally shared about Mentimeter. Yeah, that is very cool. Yeah, Mentimeter is another great technology. And Anne-Marie, so the reality is we do tend to stick with tech we're comfortable with. And yes, it would be great to adapt to the needs of the cohort. You're right. Yeah, we are creatures of comfort, and yeah, embracing new tech is definitely something. I try not to be just throwing tech at things for the sake of it, but I do try to trial or pilot. I look out for what pilots Italy here at UQ are running and try to sort of get on board with at least one or new sort of tool each semester and see, does that work for me? Does that work for my learners and the content that I teach? And that's sort of the own strategy that I've developed to kind of try and get out of using the same tech for each time. But having said that, if you find a good thing and you're onto a good thing and it works for your learners, then absolutely. And Trav says that too. Trevor says introducing students to tech, that they're more likely to use in industry. Yeah, absolutely. So that job readiness and that work readiness, and as we were just saying, you know, the fact that we work and integrate so much more online and in hybrid ways now. Yeah, that is really a fabulous point. I agree. I think that gives students a sense of their job readiness to engage across different platforms. And even if it's not the platform that we teach them on, I think it gives that transferability of willing to adapt and have to learn new platforms, and that we're lifelong learners, and that it's not just a finite point of, okay, well, I'm trained on Blackboard, I know how to do Blackboard, but there might be other things around the corner. And I think that's that ability to embrace that's actually going to separate out our graduates with their skills as well. Thank you so much for all that great discussion, everybody. I might move on now to the first of the demos. Before I do, I'll tell you about the learners that I had. So I've based today's demos on the 2 cohorts that I had personally last year. The first of those was, both were from the business school at UQ here in the Master of Business program in our marketing major. And they were both elective courses, to give you some context. Both large courses, one much more larger in semester one. I had nearly 600 students this time last year. I've almost got 500 this semester. So we're not too far, a bit off the mark, but yeah, we've almost got 500. So big cohorts. You can see there the breakdown of internal and external enrollments. And we know the realities of why that started to shift this semester for more internal and less external. But nonetheless, we teach hybrid. And so we have our learners are online. That was in first semester. In second semester, I had a smaller cohort, but still 100 students, but roughly a 50-50 split of internally and externally enrolled. To give you a bit more insight, for the first cohort that I'm drawing some examples from, I've had a look at the course analytics in Blackboard just to share with you a picture of what a typical learner in semester one was. So we had 581 students all up. Obviously, some of those withdrew after I got these stats. At the time when I drew these stats, we had about a 35% international composition and a 98% non-English speaking background composition. And you can see there to the right, the graph from Blackboard that shows the breakdown of some of the different languages that our learners have come from as their background. The different age, so all were within their 20s, from their early 20s to their late 20s in that first semester cohort of our postgrads. Majority were enrolled in the Master of Business, but as we know, students can take electives, or we might have exchange students as well, or students from other degrees that have the ability to take an elective from a compatible companion degree. And so that's the program distribution bar chart that you can see there at the bottom. So that was the learner profile for the first cohort that I had. In second semester, out of about 100 students, we had, again, a high percentage of non-English speaking, but about 50-50 were domestic versus international students. More diversity in terms of the programs that they were coming into this course from. So marketing consumer research was a market research course, but also statistics-based course as well. And so we had students, as you can see there, from data science, nutrition sciences, grad certs, engineering. So a little bit more diversity than our strategic branding cohort in the previous set there. And again, majority of the students were aged in their 20s. And a large diversity of languages spoken among our cohort as well. So those are the two learner profiles from which I've drawn today's 4 case studies. I'm now going to start with the first demonstration, and that's with Padlet. So I've recorded a little screenshot of an activity here, just to save us having to go out of PowerPoint. Just give you a moment to have a look. I used Padlet each week with my students. Sometimes I'd do it live during the lecture. Other times I'd make a Padlet that I would post to the Blackboard for each week, and I would get the students to sort of contribute, and the comments would roll in after the live lecture. Sometimes we'd be able to see the comments popping up during lecture. I found that I tended to be willing to embrace different tech, but something I've observed about myself was that I tend to go for the same Padlet layout each time. So that was really interesting to me. I've tried to branch out. When you look in Padlet, there's about 5 or 6 different layouts. So here's another layout. This is a welcome around the world, where you can put yourself in a pin on the map, and you can show for your students where you're coming from and where they're coming from. And so I've used this sort of as a week 1 strategy for both of my cohorts, and I really enjoy this as a easy way to break the ice. Sometimes people don't want to come off mute and introduce themselves, but it's relatively low intensity to put a pin on a map. And it's a nice way to create a sense of connection to place and belonging, particularly because our cohort is so diverse, as you can see scrolling around the world there. There's a nice little story there from one of our students. She wanted to share and connect back from her home country, even though she was physically based in Australia and enrolled in external mode at the time. So that's just an example of how I've used Padlet, 2 different examples there. So UQ has a actual default Padlet domain. I'll just go back a sec. So with the default Padlet, there's a default Padlet platform that you can use, but UQ actually has its own bespoke Padlet domain, which I'm sure many of you have known. I've shared the links there and I'll post them into the chat if you do want to have a look. Whoops, let me just go. In case you're interested to have a look at those yourself, I'll post it in the chat. So Padlet example 2. And then I'll post this one as well. I think I've also posted these onto the UQ Padlet domain. I've seen there's a couple of other UQ staff who have posted and shared their Padlets that they've created to the general Padlet domain that UQ has. You can, of course, make your Padlets private as well if you want to do so. But I think, sharing is one thing, trying is another. So now that I've done a bit of a case study, I'll put in the Padlet that I've created for today for us to have a go. And if you've used Padlet before, that can be part of your post. But that very most recent link there where it says, now it's your turn, that is actually a Padlet that I've created for us to have a go at this tech. Now, I'm sure many of you have used Padlet, but if you haven't, this is a great opportunity to get onto it. I'm going to switch and share my screen so we can see the live feed through. I've made the background the sort of Ready to Teach Week logo, which I thought was kind of a fun thing for us to do. So you may or may not know that you can customize your background in Padlet. If you have not used the platform before, when you log through to that link, you should be able to double click anywhere or click on the plus sign at the bottom of the screen, and it's interactive. And when you click on that, it opens up a window where you can create your subject for your post. So you can upload different types of files as well. I'll make the first post for us. And I've kept this live for us. So this will be a bit of a link and might actually build into a bit of a learning community resource for those of us who are here on the call today, or those of you who might be watching this recording after the fact and you want to sort of log on and see how people use it. If you've never used Padlet and you're not sure how to customize it, you can actually copy this Padlet or the other two that I've shared with you as a starting point, as like a sort of a low intensity intro. You can heart content. Students have the ability to add comments as well. You can edit your own post. You can choose whether you want to be anonymous. I tend to ask and prompt students to be comfortable with owning their post, but I do enable, oh, thanks, Greg. That's very cool. We've seen that students do sometimes like to be anonymous, and I think it's important to be able to give them that facility as well. So we can see live here. I've shared my screen, so hopefully you can see the live Padlet throwing through. And this is some way I sometimes use it when I'm teaching as well. I don't know if anyone else likes to have Padlet live on the screen, but it would be kind of a nice way to stack comments. I like the smiley anonymous face. It could be a nice way to stack comments rather than the chat function in Zoom. I don't know if anyone finds when they're teaching online as part of your tech toolkit, it's really handy to use chat, and we use that facility at the start today. So we got that sense, and you kind of scroll through the comments. But this could be a nice way to sort of toggle and share the content in a nice visual flow. Now, this is the wall layout, but there's different types of layouts, as I mentioned, that you can play with, including flowcharts and timelines and different things. So that's one of the things I've realized I tend to embrace new tech, but then once I embrace it, I tend to use it the same way each time. I have a preferred way of using it. And so one of the challenges I've set myself is to try and use the tech in different ways. But there's some really good points coming through there. And this will be a really useful resource for us to be able to reflect back on too from today. So Dom said, sharing screenshots and copy and paste prompts from using AI. So that's a really cool way. So you can actually embed media rich files too in your Padlet post. You can put links to YouTube there. So Jimmy's got that. Salmon in the river. Yeah, very cool. So someone's teaching foundations of advertising. So you could post a current ad each week and ask students whether they think the ad is effective or not and why, and ask a question that links to the week's content. Yeah, absolutely. So students can be really unsure of trying new technology. So I guess part of breaking down that barrier is even demonstrating it yourself with them, or doing it live, maybe during a tutorial or a lecture like this, so that they can see, oh, okay, I just, could have, a go at it. It's not too much of an imposition. And it's also something that stays a link that you can leave available after the class, for some of those learners who like to go back and might need time to process information in different ways, and that they can come back and contribute, and you can add further comments. So that's a really nice feature as well. There's some really great suggestions there. That's already a really, really handy resource for us to reflect on as well, even after today's session. So I appreciate it. And if anyone else wants to add comments or you think of things, do feel free to log back onto that link. That'll stay there for us as well after this session. So that's the first one. Can I get like a show of hands if you know how to use the emoji, or if you just want to do it on your camera like I am, that's also fine. How many of you have actually, before today at least, used Padlet in your learning, just out of interest? You can either wave at me on camera or thumbs up. And if you haven't used it before, do you think this might become part of your tech toolkit? I'll reiterate that the good thing about it is it is a UQ supported platform. So there's lots of available resources in the e-learning link for Italy, as well as on the UQ library, to help provide a bit of intro for the students if they haven't engaged with it before either. Yeah, it's good to see. Okay, well, I'll go back to the PowerPoint now and share that with you. And we'll move on to the second demo, which is the Chase. So the Chase is actually a platform through the software H5P, which UQ has a license for. Last semester, the Institute for Teaching and Learning Innovation here at UQ ran a pilot of this. And so this was the new tech that I jumped into last semester with the support of the learning designers in Italy. Hands up, did anyone else have a go at H5P or use the Chase as part of their teaching last semester? I'm interested to share with you what I found today. Here's a little video of what I created. I'll just let you have a watch first. So what that little snapshot shows you, I'll play it again. There's no audio, it's just I cut off audio so that I could talk over it and talk through it with you. I'll just go back before we go through this little part of it. Go back one slide. So the Chase is the gamification of learning in this case. So H5P is the platform that you can deploy the Chase through. You can create a series of questions for your students, and as to how you use that can be part of your teaching strategy. For me, I applied this as a revision tool in the last week of semester, where I created a series of questions, as you can see here. Some were drag and drop, some were multiple choice. Others were, get it right, get it wrong. It allowed us to deploy it during our tutorials. So I created separate Chase links. It was the same set of questions for all the students in my course. This was the statistics course that I taught in semester 2. You can set the duration of the game there. As you can see, you can see the number of players. You as the instructor can set up your questions, modify the answers, give feedback, for learners, depending on whether they get the answer right or wrong. If it is a subject that's able to have right or wrong, like stats can be, if it's social sciences, you might give them prompts or thinking if there's no clear right or wrong. And students can choose an avatar, so it's a bit of fun there. I chose to be a cat, but you can be anything. There's like a one-eyed monster, so it's all quite friendly, so that there's no sense of having to be your face on screen with everyone else seeing how you're going. You as the instructor can see how the students are doing, but they don't see how each other is doing. But there is a Chase champion, so at the end, it's both based on number of correct answers as well as the fastest to win. So it's definitely a gamification of learning. It's a little bit of fun. I used it as a revision tool and used it during tutorials to kind of break up the revision of core content across the semester. There's different ways that you could use this concept. And let's take a minute to have a go at that quiz that I set up for my learners. So what I've done is I'll post this in the chat. I've actually redeployed a link just for us. It should work without you needing to do anything like registering. I'll post it there in the chat. I hope it lets you straight in without, you know, UQ multi-factor authentication, but who knows, it might prompt you to get your mobiles out. It does. Does that, thanks, Anna. Does that mean it lets you straight in, or it makes you go through multi-verify? Oh, good. Great. So I'll share my screen so that you can see me and instructor view. And once a few more of you have logged on, you can join the game. I'm actually showing on screen, there's a game code if you just want to join straight up through your phone. So it's integrated. There's 6 players. I'm going to make it, we'll make it a few more minutes so you can see. I can always end the game shortly for us. We'll do it in full screen mode. So if you decided you wanted to have the chase in your course, this is, I won't show you the back end of how it gets set up today, but this is just sort of the final product, if you like, to trial how I did it with my students. So I can see the numbers are going up, which is kind of fun. So, you know, one way that I used this to teach last semester with my students was we got the tutors to put this live up on the screen so they could kind of all see as the numbers go up. You know, if there's 30 in the class, they kind of go, oh yeah, all right, I'll log on because, you know, 17 other people are doing it. It kind of incentivizes each other. So there's that sense of online engagement there. And then I'm going to start the game. So for those of you who are in the waiting room, it will change for you. So you can see there's a leaderboard. Now, depending on how you feel about it in the classroom, you could choose to make this visible or not to the students at the time. But as your learners progress through the quiz, so I've launched the quiz now, so you should be able to start answering the questions. And you know, you may or may not know the answers to these because it was for my postgrad stats course, I should say, but just giving you a sense of more from the pedagogy or the teaching tools, the different kinds of questions you can ask. So the reason why I thought I'd share this was I know that there's different platforms like Kahoot, or there's even inbuilt, you know, quizzes and tests and things that you can build up in Blackboard as the LMS. But I particularly liked this platform because without needing to know much coding in the background, this was a nice little template and overlay that one of our learning designers in the Institute for Teaching and Learning, Illyria Stenning, shared with me and guided me through. And actually, I found it quite user-friendly without having to know any HTML or fancy coding for anything more fancy than HTML. You could do it with some basics, and to be able to import your own answers. And so you could, I found in that way, you can see the leaderboard, so that's kind of a fun thing. So it's one way to incentivize your learners. And if they don't want to be identified, you can remind them that they can put in a nickname, like people have got initials there. Or if you go to the completed questions, the score shows you that. If you scroll up the top, when you want to debrief at the end with your learners, say like, you know, 20, especially if you're teaching online and you don't see the faces of the people in the room, and you know, sometimes everyone's got their cameras off and that sort of thing. Say you're in a tute and you don't know if people have wandered away from their computer and there's like one learner like stuck at the front, you can kind of just skim through that and you can discreetly end the game. You know, if everyone else is kind of finished and we're just not sure if that other person's still online anymore. And you can kind of then flick and go through the answers. So while everyone's still progressing, I'll at least show you like some of the answers and feedback for the first question. So I think I set up about 15 questions for this quiz on different concepts. So some of them were definition based, others were true and false. Others I tended to put in things where they had to do a bit of calculation sometimes. Drag and drop I used. One of the things I want to share with you, which I found really, really helpful, which was an interesting way to teach statistics, was actually getting students to interpret output. So I'm going to scroll down to, that's where we've got questions answered so far. So some people will keep going and we'll get to that. Otherwise, I'll show you the quiz at the end. It shows you the average time people take on different questions. So that's really helpful as well. But once we've finished, or you know, I'll give it a couple more minutes just for those of you who are enjoying going through and seeing what the kind of content is. You know, I'll show you a bit more of the functionality of this tool if you're considering using it. So there's that override if you want to end the game. You can allow retries. You can lock the game, which is like a pause. So say if you're in the tute and there's like a fire drill and you're like, oh, great, something like that, you'll lock the game and you'll all go out and be like, come back and we'll finish our H5P quiz. And you can look at the results and download those as an CSV file, and then reset it, whether you wanted to use it for a different learner cohort. I like to create different links so that you can save the learner progress, but that's just me. Some people like to just use the one link and then reset it depending on whether they want to keep it. And so Anna, thanks for the comment there. It looks a lot like Kahoot. I agree, it does. I've used Kahoot before and I've used this one. I personally quite liked this one because of the customizability and the gamification aspect, but Kahoot has that as well. So I think this was a case of, you know, user preference, but also trying to get creative with the kinds of content that I could put through as a question. So I might just end the game. Sorry, anyone who's really enjoying it, but you can use this link now that it's in the chat if you want to go play through it again, because I want to go through. So there's our Chase champion. So Ted, well done. So you get like a little celebration screen. I don't know if you guys can see that. Great. So yeah, so first, second, and third. So we had an equal tie for third. So second and third, Caroline and Anorama. Very well done. So you can debrief with your students on that and how they've gone. But actually going through the answers, I think, is one of the things that's quite useful. So I might just go back, show summary, if I can get that. It's got, no, it hasn't got it there. There was one more thing I wanted to show you all. I might just see if I can. Yes, are you able to see my screen in the H5P platform at the moment? So I'll just sure that I'm sharing the right one. I'll show you briefly the back end, just out of curiosity, if you're wondering like how hard is it to create this kind of resource. So if we go into edit, potential loss of student responses, that's okay. We all know Ted and Anorama and how you went. So I customized that learning link for today, called it the Curating Tech Toolkit. So our little cohorts one, ready for the chase. You can customize all of that. You can see you get like pretty much like a Blackboard interface. So you don't have to know too much in terms of coding. It's quite user friendly. You can change the kind of content that you get as well, which you can do on other platforms. The one that I wanted to show you, which I think I've got in here, which we didn't get to, was an interpretation of some output from SPSS. So what I did was I put a screenshot in of some output and got students to identify, here it is, a regression model. So because it was a stats course, you know, in the tutorials, we get them to use the stats software. What I did in here was actually getting them to interpret it, which is part of what they do in the final exam. And also for their assignment, they have to analyze their own data. And so you can actually put hotspots and ask students, you know, with different hotspots, you know, identify for me, how do you know the model's significant? Where is the significance value? Or what does the R square mean? What is the R squared value? You know, put marker on it. So they actually know out of the SPSS output where it is. And there's different, you know, applications that you might be able to think of. You can move your hotspot. I won't move it because that's the correct spot for the R square value. But there's lots of stats output that they get. And so that was one of the skills that I was trying to sort of teach them. And if they kind of didn't quite get, if they got the, you know, thing mixed up and they said, oh, the R squared was actually this value here, or they picked the wrong one, you'd be able to write in some feedback and give them that definition. So just different ways to sort of make it engaging. And you can see here there's some more user options about publishing and collaborators. You can choose who else that you queue if you want to have other people in the course, or maybe if you've got a large course and you're lucky enough to have an administrator or others that can work with you building these resources. You can share the organization. So I've shared it to the Bell faculty previously, so that's there as a resource as well. So that's just a few, and you can change the number of attempts. So if you want to increase the number of attempts the user can do. So that's a bit of a demo of both the use of the tool and also showing with you the back end of how I built this using that template that Illyria shared with me. So the Chase actually is a tool that came with it. In the interest of time, I'll go back to the PowerPoint presentation and we'll go on to the next one, which was my favorite one to use. I'm sure we've all got different tech that's our favorites, but I was very excited about this. So go back to Flip. So Flip or Flipgrid is a tool that Microsoft developed. And the way I came to think of it was TikTok for academics. That's kind of my way that I came to use this last semester. I'm going to use it again this semester. I really enjoyed it. I found that I set up, you can see I had a channel for my second semester cohort. I discovered it halfway through the year. I've created a Flip channel for us as well today to have a go on. It's short form content, short form video content. You can send your students a join code. It's a UQ supported tool as well. It's something that I used to create the following kinds of engagement with my learners. So you get some analytics. So from 36 short videos that I posted throughout the 13 weeks, I roughly posted 2 or 3 videos a week. So it was like sort of a semi-daily touch point to keep engaged with students between that long week that goes between each stats lecture, like 2 hours of stats and me talking with students on Zoom, or sometimes talking to myself if no one else was answering my questions. This was a nice way to just be popping up in their inbox by their choice because they subscribed to my channel, and actually getting views. So out of those 100 students, those videos had 793 views. I got 21 comments and generated about 33.9 hours of discussion according to the software. So I got some nice feedback there. I'll just share with you a little insight into what my channel was. So I called it Musings on Market Research. I ended up getting about 60 subscribers. So I had 100 students enrolled. I think maybe 8 of those were staff that I invited throughout semester or that I got chatting to. So I think maybe about 53 students. The responses were my videos that I uploaded. So this is just a little preview of some of the different thumbnails for the videos that I created. Sometimes they were quite low tech and fun. So like me in my office, just with like the whiteboard, and I'd overlay some text. Other times I would get a little bit more high tech and do something a bit more interesting. Sometimes I'd do a preview of something on Blackboard, like how to submit to turn it in. Other times I did interviews with staff. So you can see there, those of you who know in the marketing discipline, Ravi, Associate Professor Ravi Papu, he used to run this course before I had the pleasure of taking it last semester. And so I did a bit of an interview with him on his experiences for the students. This is a little preview of me, and oops, let me go back. There's no audio, but if you want to see the audio, you can actually go to my channel and have a look. But let me just go back for you all. Sorry about that. So I just wanted to show you, I actually go in and preview what style of videos and how you might use it. So if I just press play, I had my Zoom toolbar hovering over it. So it kind of, let's skip ahead. So here's some examples. So here's the first video I created. I wanted to go and show the students that I realized in our master's cohort, we had some students who've never even set foot on campus. They're going to complete their 2-year master degree without ever having been to St. Lucia. And so one day I just decided to do, I felt a bit of a dag at first, but I was walking along with my mobile, as you can see. And what I wanted to demonstrate was like how easy it is to use Flip, whether you're sitting at your desk or just on the go with your mobile, to create quick content to engage your learners. Sometimes I'd be in my office like here, and I'd go through a stats explanation. If I was getting lots of emails from students on, what's this mean, or how do I do this technique, I might create a video response to explain the stats, and I'd be able to like have text come up behind me, or if I wanted, I could write on the whiteboard, but I tend to like typing the text as different ways to share the content. So there's different types. I made lots of different types of videos. Here's another example. I wanted to explain to them a concept about hypothesis testing, which was a pretty core concept for a market research course. And so I created this little 1:54 video as well. The other one that I thought was pretty cool that I wanted to show you was actually being inside SPSS. There was a bit of a preview of that one before. So SPSS was a software that we used in the course, and I'll just go back and see if I can find that, because I think I just about skipped over. Yeah, so there you can see me. I put myself as a little cameo inside SPSS, and I did a live like run through of me doing some of the stats that we needed to do in the course, just to get students who might have been a bit afraid of starting this new software or engaging with stats to show them the answer rather than just posting the stats output. So a different way to bring it to life. And the only other video that I just wanted to show you an example of what you can do with Flip. There's me in the office again. I put myself in Blackboard. Again, to try and get them engaged. They at least the formal lectures I did all via Zoom, and had standard PowerPoints and all the learning resources were there. And I found that I was getting students engaging with the Flip channel, but I wanted to get them back on Blackboard. So I made one of my flips about Blackboard, and I was like, remember, this is where you do this. This is where you upload your assignments. Of course, you can do student preview mode for Blackboard, but I chose to just do it like that. And so that was probably my favorite tool that I've discovered. So having, a social media channel for academics, but you can make it personal to your cohort, so only people you invite can join. Without further ado, for those of you who want to do, I've created a Flip channel for us for today. If anyone's feeling excited enough, I've created a QR code, which you can do with Flip. So if you want to just keep your what do you call it? Computer. That's a good word to know on a session about tools, technology. You keep your computer on with your Zoom, but if you want, you got your phone, and if you want to scan the QR code, it should work for you. If you want to be, just viewing and you don't want to create any content, that's fine, because I'm going to create a video live now for us on Flip and post it. And if you want to come back and use this as a learning resource and start playing with Flip after today, you can. I think for those of you who do want to go, it will prompt you to sign up either with Google or Microsoft. Might do that, but I'll post in the chat. You can always save this link for afterwards. And so we'll all still get to do and see what it looks like to post on Flip. Any of you might like to do that now. We'll just take 5 minutes to go through it, because let me show you. I share my screen and we go back to Flip. And that's the one I'll share with you all. So at least you'll see what it looks like to make a Flip video. I can get that up. So some of you might choose to have a go at making a Flip video now on your phone if you want. If you don't want, that's okay. Continue. So let me just bring up Flip. I'll just log in the background, and then I'll share my screen with you so you can see us creating a little video right now. And so at the moment, it's only you all in this call, or anyone who is watching this recording and sees the Zoom the Flip link on the Zoom, that would access this. So I'm going to continue, log on. It's asking me to authenticate. So I've got that UQ MFA that I'm doing at the moment. Interesting that we got through before with the other one. So now let me just share my screen. All right, so I've got 4 members. Yay. So some of you have joined. Thank you for my early adopters. That's very exciting. For those of us who kind of just want to sit back and watch, you can see I've been able to give our group a name. I've added in the Italy picture that's been the key picture for all of the presentations during Ready to Teach Week. You can add collaborators. You can invite students directly by link. We can see who our members are here. Caroline K, Gus. We've got a few others as well. There's one topic. You can create more topics by clicking on the plus sign. I'm just going to go in here and see. There's 0 responses yet, but we're going to change that. We're going to make a video now, or I am, and you're going to be part of it. If you don't want to be, feel free to turn your camera off. Add to topic. All right, so this is how we do it. I love Flip, but this is just me. Camera's already in use. So that's the Zoom thing. I won't kill the Zoom call now, but upload video. You could pre-record a Zoom or pre-record a short video. I've done that when I've actually had a Q&A session with students. I made like a highlights reel of an assessment Q&A that I did, and I posted some frequently asked questions as like a short little sample. I show you something, if I can do it on my phone, I'll go back and show you. I'll try my own technique. So I'll show you the QR code. So say you've got your similar setup, you're in Zoom and you want to make a Flip, and you've hit that kind of I've only just discovered that. That's interesting. You can go back, get that QR code. So you go to share topic, QR code, should be able to scan it. And now it should show me, yep, sign into Flip. So I'm just on my phone now. I'm staying in the Zoom call, but doing it this way. Continue. Do MFA yet again, multi-factor authentication, get through all the phone, type in the extra code that we now have to do. All right, so do I appear as a new user? Not yet, because I own the channel. Okay, so I'm on my phone and I'm gonna post a video. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining our Flip channel today. This is a brief demo to show you how easy it is. And I'm gonna add in this video to our Flip channel so that we can all see. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for joining. So now I can post that. I'm going to give it a short caption saying demo, and I'm going to post a topic. So I'm doing that from my phone right now, and I'm hoping that should appear. The only reason why I couldn't use my laptop camera is that I was signed into Zoom. Yay! So there's the video I literally just made live with you all. So yeah, if you want to watch it, it's just me there. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining our Flip channel today. This is a brief demo to show you how easy it is. I'm going to add, yeah, so I just paused it because you've already seen that live. But you can actually do much more high-tech stuff if you've got the time to fiddle with it, like using some of the filters and things that I showed you just before in the videos that I made. So I'll post into the chat the link for the channel that I created for my cohort. If any of you are interested, I will share that with you. Of course, you've already got the link for our own group one. If any of you want to go in and have a play and make a video, it is a cool tool. Yeah, thanks, Anna. I like it too. And that is Flip. So I discovered that last semester, and that's definitely staying in my toolkit. Let's go back to the Zoom, to the PowerPoint slides. I'm briefly going to talk about EdStem because I want to get to our group chat before we finish up. So EdStem is a tool that you can add in to Blackboard. So Blackboard comes with an inbuilt discussion tool, as we all know, but EdDiscussion or EdStem, EdDiscussion Board, is a tool that you can add in to create threads that are a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more intuitive, works a little bit more like social media. People can, I don't think you can upvote content, but you can definitely heart content. So students can like a post. You can have a verified post if it's a response by a staff member, which is handy for answers. They can post anonymously, as this little video on the screen is showing you that I've made. And you can customize what the threads are about, and you can also give students the direct thread number. So that's number 47, post 47, if you want them to be able to have access to it, link directly into a thread. I found this useful. I found mixed levels of engagement between this and Blackboard. I wish there was a few more features and functionality that EdStem did, or EdDiscussion Board did have, but that was my experience of it. And I'm thinking there's probably more of us who have had experience with using this platform because it's been promoted for a little while here at UQ2. So there's just a bit of a visual demo with that. I haven't created a EdDiscussion Board for us today to trial, because that's something you can actually add as a tool in your Blackboard LMS course, and there's instructions for that. The thing that I thought I would share with you is the analytics that you get in the background. So you can see in the video there, you get some interesting information on peaks when students have been accessing and logging on posts. It shows you what the top categories are. So the most talked about threads were related to assessment, unsurprisingly. It's a bit of social, so students used it as a tool to introduce themselves. And also, I haven't shown it here because it shows the names of the people, but it tells you like who's logging on the most, who's engaging the most, who the top answerers are. It was me. But you'll have students who like to jump in and answer questions too. So that's EdDiscussion. I know that was a brief run through of that one, but in the interest of time, I want to stop talking there and actually open the floor for anyone who wants to come off mute or just to post in the chat about your own experiences, what you've taken away from today, what might be in or out of your own toolkit. So I will stop talking now. And to conclude, if anyone wants to come off mute and share or post in the chat a reflection to conclude, what's in or out of your own tech toolkit for semester 1? Is there any new tech that you might like to try? I'll stop myself talking there and leave the floor open, and I'll reflect on the chat in case anyone wants to come off mute. Yeah, there's some great posts coming through in the chat. If anyone wants to make a comment off microphone, unmute themselves or off camera, feel free to do so.
I'm Trevor here, by the way.
Hi, Trevor.
I'm puppy dog.
Hello.
I'm the puppy dog. A lot of the work that I do is collaborative, having worked with ITEE in education, and they do lots and lots of group work. So I've used Miro quite a lot, and in particular during the pandemic, it was good because we had people from all over the place, and they were able to work together, post information. They were able to add comments, give feedback, and they could post anything into Miro with things like articles, etc. I often made a course Miro board where I would put all the course content just as a reciprocal to Blackboard one year. But it was good for them to share and give lots and lots of feedback.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that, Trevor. I think using these tech tools for work that's collaborative, like what you've mentioned in group work, is some of the greatest ways to use it, particularly when you've got large and diverse cohorts. And I can imagine the students in engineering really embracing some of these technologies too, and perhaps inventing their own as time goes on, different programs. And there's some great comments coming through in the chat too. Appreciate for those of you who have to jump off because it is 2 o'clock, but if anyone wants to stay on for another few moments and share any more thoughts, I'll pause talking in case anyone does. And appreciate Hong as well, who's answering. I worked with Hong in Italy as well for our peer evaluation tool that we used in that first semester with our group work assignment. And that's yet another tool that we have here at UQ. So thank you, Hong, for those questions that you're answering there too.
My pleasure. Teegan, can I ask how many students are there in the course that you are using Flip?
Yeah, there was 100 last semester, 101, sorry. Oh, thank you, Karen. There is another session at 2. So some people may be signed on to that and going to that. You should see in the chat there. But yes, this semester I'll be using it with my cohort of nearly 500 students. So I'm excited to see what we get out of that.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so there's in this Zoom link is the next session. So we'll end this one now. And thank you to everyone. If anyone wants to email me, feel free to do so. You can find me on UQ Researchers as well. And I will end the session there so that the next presenter can start. Thanks, everybody.